What's up? What's up? What's up? I think I had to come on here live. I got my Ock with me, brother Shahid Ali. He gonna let y'all know who he is and why he's important to this conversation as we go along and have this. I wanted to come on today and talk about Ja Morant, Adam Silver, and who owns the image of the black man, right? The image and the voice of the black man. A lot of people's been talking about this Ja Morant situation, but I think they talking about it in terms of their aspirations and how they feel about if they had the opportunity to make 200, 300, 400, maybe even $1 billion and what they would have did. But these people is 30, 35, 40, 50, 60 years old. You even have ex-NBA players talking about it who didn't live in the age of social media, right? Who did a lot of things, right? The NBA has always been a dysfunctional league. So you got these people who didn't live in the age of social media scrutinizing Ja Morant for him and some of his behaviors in the NBA. So, as most of y'all already know, Ja Morant is facing his second suspension. And right now, Adam Silver is him and I guess the other NBA execs is thinking about what they're going to do with Ja Morant. Now, Ja Morant, for somebody that's been in the NBA briefly and potential wise is not at the peak of his career, has had a lot of incidents, right? Um, and it kind of just started steamballing about a year ago. He had an incident where his mother was at a Foot Locker. She got into it with one of the workers at a Foot Locker that happened to be 17 years old. She called Ja Morant. Ja Morant and about 9 of his homeboys came up to the Foot Locker and tried to have a conversation with the young man or tried to ensue an altercation with the young man. The young man blocked himself in the back of the Foot Locker and he didn't come out. Ja Morant had some words with one of the mall security officers and then they left. Part of that report was that one of either Ja Morant or one of his entourage had a gun. Then only a few days later, Ja Morant's mother is at a volleyball game. Ja Morant mother's at a volleyball game for his sister, and I guess there was some heckling in the crowd. Somebody had some choice words, either at her or her daughter. She calls Ja Morant again, and Ja Morant shows up, him and his entourage again, confront some of the high school kids. This time, security gets between them and a high school kid. Once again, somebody was saying that Ja Morant may or may not, or somebody of his entourage had a gun. And after that, this is really strange because Ja Morant is mentoring. He's mentoring a kid.
Mm.
He's mentoring this kid. This kid is like 16, 17 years old, and then him and the kid get into it after playing a one-on-one pickup game of basketball. Ja Morant claims he was just defending himself. It was alleged that he hit the kid in the face a few times, went into the house, came out with a gun in his waistband. And I just find all these incidents to, kind of be troubling because it involves minors, You got anything to say on this? Just them first 3 incidents?
Only thing I want to add is that it just really shows um the type of people that Ja Morant hang around because he keep getting into incident with minors. I wonder why he's not hanging with adults, his age. And what's the fascination with him hanging around minors and getting into these incidents? So
You
that's
know,
one of the questions I had.
and that was the biggest thing I was thinking about. Like, heavy is the head that wear the crown. And Memphis is one of the poorest cities for black people in America.
Right,
And here's a guy that's touching, tens of millions of dollars, right? So
right.
he got a big target on his back. And there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people in Memphis that would love to get at Ja Morant, for whatever reason. And it's, odd to me that I think he really picks these situations, right? He kind of picks situations that he know he can win.
Mm.
And that does speak to some immaturity on his part. So that's like one of the first things I was thinking about is that, here's you like every time it's a child, every time
Right.
it's, a young person, I'm like, come on, man. There's a lot of people in Memphis that's looking for smoke.
Right.
You if you want some smoke, they got some smoke for you. And they gonna bring it to you. So that was the first thing. But what I really found troubling is in two of those first three incidents, and this is his family, right? This is his sister, this is his mother, his father, T. Morant, and Ja Morant. Everybody on the internet is talking about relationships, and I know it becomes taboo, and people are like, why? But this is one of the reasons why people stress the fact of relationships so much. This is not a single parent household. Ja Morant has a mother and a father that he grew up with in South Carolina. His mother has a whole husband, right? My issue is who runs the house? Who's wearing the pants in the household? She has an issue with somebody. You got a whole husband to call. You have a whole
Right.
husband there to protect the family. Why are you calling your son? Right?
Right.
You like there's wisdom in age. I'm not going to call somebody that's 20 years old when I got somebody that's 40 or 50 years old to call.
Right.
That's a problem to me. Not only are you calling your son, it's just not a regular, run of the mill average guy. This is a guy who's the face of Memphis Grizzlies basketball team. He's the reason why the whole family moved to Memphis, and he's becoming the face of the NBA. Maybe not now, but then. Why would you call him? That to me, that makes no sense. And that kind of speaks to the dysfunction. Now, I know his father was a barber, and sometimes barber money is not consistent. This is just me assuming maybe his mother was the consistent breadwinner in the house, and maybe she kind of wears the pants and she runs things in the house. Because for the life of me, I can't understand why a married woman would be calling her son for aid and assistance when she runs into a problem and not calling her husband.
Right.
That there's some dysfunction there. So there was another incident after Memphis played Pacers in Memphis where, they kind of got into it. It's a little shoving incident on the court. Then after the game, they said an SUV pulled up and somebody was pointing some lasers at the Pacers road management team. And Pacers road management team said they believed there was some guns attached to those lasers. Investigation pursued, nothing was found, so the NBA dropped it. And then this is when things get to the point where Adam Silver steps in. They play Denver. They go to Denver. They play the game. After the game, I guess they're waiting the next day to leave. And Ja Morant is seen in the club at a strip club. I believe the strip club is called, and this is ironic, the strip club is called Shotgun Willie's. So he's at Shotgun Willie's, and he's waving around a gun. Now, they say he spent about $50,000 at the strip club that night. They rented out a private space, and he's on Instagram, and he's waving a gun. And what got the NBA's attention is that Denver police said they were investigating. So they did the investigation. No charges was filed. And that tells me that, one, Ja Morant has a gun permit. And when you have a gun permit, your gun permit is not just good in the state that you got the gun permit in. It's also good in the states that accept your gun permit. So say in Indiana, I have a gun permit in Indiana that allows me to travel in Chicago with the gun permit. I can't get out the car, but I can travel. It's good for carrying in Kentucky, Tennessee, basically all of the southern states. And it's also good in Florida. It's not good in California. And I think there's a few other states like Pennsylvania when you start to get up to the East Coast. So there's nothing illegal about having your gun in a state that allows you to have a gun permit. Now, the NBA has a moral clause And they do have some rules and regulations that say, and we know this because of the Gilbert Arenas incident, that says players can't have guns in any NBA capacity when it comes to traveling or any NBA facility. So in order from Ja Morant to get from Tennessee to Colorado, he had to take the gun probably on the team bus. We know at least on the team plane. So with that being said, he did have a violation. That's where Adam Silver stepped in, and he eventually got the 8-game suspension. At first, it was just a suspension, and they did the investigation. And then after the investigation, they kind of said, okay, we're going to come and just go ahead and get him 8 games. He does his 8 games. He goes down to Miami or somewhere in Florida. He does a little bit of rehab. After rehab, he comes back in. Pretty much has a successful NBA season this year, even though they get ousted in the first round. Memphis had some injuries. They had not only Ja was getting back, but Bane was getting back. Brooks was just showing out all year. That's a whole nother story. But yeah, so he came back. He was still able to play. Still, no criminal laws broken. What did you think about the first suspension? So, with that being said, can you hear me, Shaheed? I think you probably went out. Okay, that's cool. I can't hear you right now. When you come in, I'm gonna stop. So he has the first suspension. And I was just noticing like some of the memes and stuff that was floating around after the suspension. I don't know if you muted yourself or what, but I can't hear you at this moment. So he has the first suspension, and Adam Silver is very ambiguous when it comes to things. They just said they sat down, they had a talk. He was very remorseful. He apologized, he said all the things that he needed to say to basically, get back on the court and to be able to finish his season. I thought an 8-game suspension was kind of heavy, to be honest with you, especially coming off of Kyrie Irving. And I'll tell you why. Adam Silver is just real ambiguous when it comes to like giving people suspensions and what he's going to do. And they're never really clear about what laws have been broken and what rules have been violated. Everything is just like up in smoke, and then he like comes down on something. And I also noticed most of the suspension takes place when the fan base gets riled up. Now, there's a lot of people that say, well, Ja comes from the suburbs. Ja, he's in the NBA and he's playing gangster, right? And he shouldn't be playing gangster, right? If he wants to be gangsters, he's going to lose everything. And I agree with that, but the NBA is one big suburb, right? Here's an article. On Medium, and it's Stephen Curry and the suburbanization of the NBA. And what this article explains is that most players in the NBA come from the suburbs. To the surprise of no one, the Golden State Warriors, Steph Curry, reportedly the NBA's most valuable player. This article is from a few years ago. While Curry win reinforces his position as today's preeminent point guard, it also illustrates a decade-long shift in the story of professional basketball. For a long time, the idea of inner-city phenom has held sway. In the case of LeBron James, who was born to a poor teen mother in Akron, Ohio, this tale is true. I will also have to say, even though LeBron James was born to a single parent in Akron, he was also, plucked up out of that situation and put into a middle-class household and raised, he also comes from the middle class. So, you can make the case, but it doesn't really, that's really not LeBron's story. That wasn't also the case. The NBA was once a league where young men from the inner city dominated the game. As ESPN Peter Keating points out, during the 60s and 70s, more than 90% of NBA players were from urban areas. Greats like Wilt Chamberlain, Dr. J, Nate Archibald, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and Elgin Baylor grew up poor in city housing projects. But that has changed. These days, both black and white players are far more likely to have come from economic privilege. A 2010 article in the International Review for Sociology of Sports looked at the background of NBA players from 1994 to 2004. Among all NBA players during that period, 66% of African Americans and 93% of whites have advantaged social background. In fact, NBA players who were raised in poverty and broken homes made up a minority of the league. So, like this narrative that these players are coming from the ghetto is just not true, right? It used to be true, it's not true anymore. The NBA is made up of people who are privileged. It costs a lot. It costs a lot to be able to pay for these AAU teams and travel all over the country and get into these camps. And it's, all this stuff costs a lot, thousands of dollars. Right. And I'm talking about starting off at maybe from like 6 years old, sometimes like 4, 5, 6 years old, up until your career ends, whenever that may be. So the NBA is really not the suburbs. All these players in the NBA, the NBA is not, players who come from rags to riches. Not saying that, but I also want to say this. When they say the suburbanization, black money ain't like white money. Matter of fact, there's a report that says 7 out of 10 black males that's born into the middle class will fall out to poor working class or working class poor. So I don't want people to get the idea that, these are like stable middle class or upper middle class. It's just basically saying that, a lot of these players come from 2-parent households where maybe both parents have a job and they have some sense of stability more than the average black person. So you are still coming from maybe the top 35% of the black community. Now, I would also say that we see this influence with hip hop and basketball. And it's strange because that's kind of what Ja Morant is taking slack for. The NBA, so hip hop is America's biggest export. So by the NBA, caring about growing its bottom line, it's only right that the NBA would align with hip hop to try to reach corners of the world that basketball couldn't get the NBA, right? So you see the two merge, and there's this big influence. It's been a big influence since the early 80s or the mid 80s when Curtis Blow did the "We're Playing Basketball" song, and it really blew up from there. So the NBA uses rap music and they use rap artists during the All-Star games, during official NBA games. Rappers rap about basketball. They use it in their lyrics. They show up to the parties, the after parties, the official NBA parties, and so forth and so on. Even like the NBA games, I remember seeing 21 Savage doing All-Star Atlanta Hawks halftime game. So he's doing a halftime game. So there's a big influence and like alignment between the NBA and hip hop. And it influences the way they market products. If you remember, like some of the LeBron James Mountain Dew commercials with Drake and Lil Wayne, Drake them hosted some NBA award ceremony a few years ago that they brought to an end. But so the NBA can use the rappers and the hip hop and the songs to market their brand. But when the NBA players is influenced by hip hop, it becomes a problem. And that's part of the hypocrisy of the NBA. The NBA is a billion-dollar entity that gets to do what it wants to do. And it gives millions of dollars, sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars to its players. And there's not always black and white rules between what you can and cannot do. It's a thin line that you play with when you get into the NBA, right? some people get in trouble for certain things that other people don't get in trouble for. And it happens all the time. If you think about Kyrie Irving got in trouble for a tweet. He got in trouble for a tweet, right? And he didn't even immediately get suspended. It wasn't until some of the members from the Jewish community showed up courtside and heckled him the whole game. And then he had a post-game interview where he said some things about he can't be anti-Semitic. And Adam Silver felt like he was just being ungrateful. So then the whole thing started to snowball. So you got this, another thing is that when you go into the NBA, you sign those contracts. I don't think a lot of people understand that you're signing your likeness and your image away. And the NBA wants to portray you in a certain image, and it doesn't want to portray you in the image of those who community you come from. It doesn't want to portray you as somebody who's poor and black. And I think that's the biggest issue with this right now. I'm not saying that Ja Morant doesn't have some issues. What I am saying is that he didn't do anything illegal. He didn't do anything illegal. So when you see Ja Morant taking slack for having a gun in Tennessee, where they just had a mass shooting, and the government and the whole GOP party came down and say, hey, we value our Second Amendment rights. And we value our Second Amendment rights so much that even though we just had a mass shooting, and those kids were like that, those were right-wing Christian conservative kids. That was a Christian evangelical school that got shot up. I believe one of the kids that got killed had a play date at the mayor's mansion. So in Tennessee, where they love guns, where it's legal to carry, open carry. Indiana has permitless carry. I'm not sure if Tennessee has permitless carry, but it's legal to open carry. Ja Morant gets in not trouble with the law, but trouble with the NBA for having a gun. And it's like, he's not the first NBA player to have a gun. When you look at this, here's Draymond Green. And it says NBA star shoots gun with Israeli police during visit. All right. So it can't be legal to have a gun. There's pictures of LeBron James with guns. And then there's this guy. If y'all don't know who this is former NBA center Chris Kamaan. He played for Portland. He played for LA Clippers. He played for a few teams in the NBA, and he's a gun enthusiast. There's a lot of pictures with him holding guns, pointing guns, doing everything with guns. He never got suspended. So if you're not doing anything illegal and you're not being investigated by the police, why is Ja Morant in trouble now? And he's in trouble because there's a social contract between blacks and whites. And this is how white supremacy works, is that you, especially when you're successful, quote unquote, and you've made it to their benevolence, right? You always got to kiss the ring. You always got to capitulate to whatever they want you to do. And when it's time for them to discipline you, you got to take it with a grain of salt and move on. You basically got to eat crow. And Ja Morant posing with a gun on Instagram or flashing a gun on Instagram is like a spit to their face. The same people who's hailing that white guy up in New York City who just choked the black homeless brother out as a hero is saying Ja Morant is a thug. The same people who's going to go to the polls and vote for Donald Trump again is saying Ja Morant is a thug. The same people who have no problems with Greg Abbott is saying Jonathan Morant is a thug. Here's Georgia Governor Brian Kemp. This was a campaign ad. This is how he campaigned. He's campaigning with some young man he says interested in his daughter, and he's got all these guns around him, and he's basically doing the intimidation thing, right? There's other campaign videos with this guy. He's shooting guns. He said, I like guns. I like to shoot, right? He's basically a big Second Amendment man, and there's no issue with that. When you think about LeBron James being at the gun store shooting the big machine gun that TMZ got on video, when you think about Draymond Green with the Israeli police officer shooting a gun, it makes me think, all of this irresponsible talk about Ja Morant having a gun, but none of this talk about the other players. Is it because they was up under white authority when they had the gun? Like, it got to be more to it. So are black people with guns only safe when white people are supervising them? That's what I'm starting to think here. It's only when white people get to supervise you can a black person have a gun. That's why we love black police officers, and that's why we love, certain figures that have guns, because we know they're being either supervised or being controlled by the white power structure. There's no difference from Ja Morant riding in the car having a gun and what you see right here, other than the fact that he's listening to hip hop music and he's with 3 other black guys. That's the only difference. Nobody came down on any of these other players for having guns, right? And I need people to understand this is different from, say, like Sebastian Telfair having a gun, because he had a gun in the state where you couldn't carry weapons. It was a crime. He ended up going to prison and doing like 3 years. Maybe he's locked up right now for it, but I know he got sentenced to 3.5 years. I don't know how they broke that up. But it's just the NBA gets to control your image. And it's sad because it's all based off white fragility. It's based off what white people expect you to do. They feel like, hey, we took you out of the ghetto, even though you really didn't come from the bottom of the ghetto, but we know you black, and you, even if you're not extremely poor, you align with, poor black people. You come from South Carolina, and we brought you into the super elite. The problem with this whole thing is that a lot of people is projecting their aspirations on the Ja Morant, saying, man, this dude gonna mess up. He got the chance to get a whole bunch of money. And I'm like, from what I see from Ja Morant, I don't think he care about the money. I think that brother got more money in his account now than he ever thought he would have. You got to remember, Ja Morant isn't like a top 100 player. He didn't play in the Nike games. He didn't play in the Jordan Classic. He wasn't a McDonald's All-American. He went to Murray State, which is a Division I, but a mid-major. He averaged up 10 points his freshman year, I believe about 11 points his sophomore year, and then he comes out of nowhere. Now he's the face of the NBA. He's the number 1 player in his draft class, doing far better than Zion Williams, who struggles to keep his weight in check so he can stay healthy and stay on the court. And now they're making this guy the face of the NBA as players like LeBron James age out, and the Greek Freak and other players just don't have the likability of, say, like somebody like Ja Morant. And I say this also, Ja Morant has no issues on the court. He has no issues on the court. And not only does he show up consistently in big games, he shows up. He has all the makings of a star power. But it's my belief that he doesn't want any of this. I think Ja Morant would be cool with like $100,000 of Benz and just being able to hoop. And that's the problem right there that a lot of people don't understand. See, if you was Ja Morant, then you would probably be going for $500 million. You would probably want to be the next LeBron James. When I see him, Ja Morant is somebody that was like every other 23-year-old, right? They want a nice car, they want some girls, they want some jewelry, and they want to go to whatever hot spot is going on in their community where black people is hanging out and having fun. Ja Morant just want to ride around Memphis in a nice car and parking lot pimp and pick up girls. He probably want to go to courtside at the Rucker game and chill in the stand. He doesn't want to go to Martha's Vineyard. That's not his goal. He doesn't want to be around that stuff. I think the NBA is trying to, package him and make him into something that he just doesn't want to be. And that's where the problem comes in at. That's where the problem comes in with a lot of people. And I think when I said this, people thought it was a joke, but to me, it wasn't a joke. If you look at Ja Morant's first incidents, right, he's alleged to be getting into it with people, pointing guns at people, fights, getting into it with security guards, right? This was about a year ago up until like 8 months ago, something like that, 6-8 months ago. Now he's just riding in the car with his friends, listening to music and not pointing a gun at anybody, but showing off a gun on Instagram. That's legal. To me, that's growth. That's growth. He went from being investigated by the police because he was allegedly doing something that could harm somebody. getting into it with people to just hanging with his friend, exercising his Second Amendment rights. It's not criminally wrong at all. If the NBA finds fault with Ja Morant, it's just because they want to control his image and his likeness for what's better for them. But do we ever think what's better for the player? And to me, that's a problem because the whole NBA is dysfunctional. It would be hard for you to name 5 people that played in the NBA that's not dysfunctional, right? I mean, you hear the stories about the friends in the family room and all the women that's lined out outside the friends in the family room to try to have an NBA player's baby or to get in some type of relationship with them where they can get some money from them, right? Magic was the darling of the NBA until he got AIDS. You think the NBA didn't know that he was running around having all them trysts and risque relationships? Michael Jordan had an alcohol problem. Michael Jordan had a gambling problem. Michael Jordan, like they tell stories now and laugh about it. This is before you could gamble on sports. Michael Jordan would stay up all night gambling, smoking cigars, drinking, wouldn't even go to sleep, go to the game, gamble on the game, right? Play a certain way so he'll win the bet. And nobody had an issue with any of that stuff. And they all kept it hush, right? Shaq ended up in Superhead's book. Wife divorced him. He talks about it now. All these guys is dysfunction. Is Ja Morant more dysfunctional than Allen Iverson? Allen Iverson got case after case after case after case. And I'm not saying this to say that Ja Morant doesn't have some growing to do. What I'm saying is that you take these men from black communities that's been marginalized and deprived their whole life, and you give them a whole bunch of money. You give them a whole bunch of money. You don't give them the keys to the city. If they superstars, they got the keys to the nation, right? And they got worldwide fame. And then you say, but you can't be who you used to be. And you can't hang where you used to hang and with the people you used to hang with. You got to come over to the white dysfunctional side. So you can't go kick it at the club and drink and smoke weed and hang out in the parking lot. But you can go to like a penthouse with, some of our elite prostitutes and snort cocaine and party with them. And some of these guys, they struggle with that. They're like, man, this ain't the life for me. I thought money was going to make me free. And I thought, this was kind of surprising to me. But JJ Redick kind of explained it the best out of everybody I heard. And I know why. And that's, goes back to the original problem. That's because the NBA and these institutions own the black voice and they own the black image. So a lot of these people is still beholding to the white power structure. And this is what JJ Redick had to say.
Both these gun-waving incidents on IG Live, there has been no law that's been broken, as far as we know. Colorado police investigated, no law was broken. Assuming this is in Tennessee, open carry allowed in that state, assuming he has a permit for whatever it may be, no law has been broken. The reason I bring that up, it is very clear in our CBA what happens if you fail a drug test for performance-enhancing drugs or a street drug, a narcotic. It's very clear. It's this amount of games. It's very clear if you get a certain amount of technicals or a certain amount of flagrants, how much you're going to be suspended. And so that's where I think a 40-game suspension, the precedence for that, for not breaking a law. Again, we can go into the backstory of the incident with the teenager. Ja's claiming self-defense, that the teenager threw the ball in his face. We can go into the incident at the mall when he yelled at his security guard. We can go into the incident with the Indiana Pacers traveling party. As far as we know, all of these things have been investigated and no law has been broken. I'm not condoning the behavior. I'm not saying there should be no punishment. There should be. There should be consequences. You are the face of the league. You are representing the NBA. You are a role model to young kids. All of that. I don't think half a season is the right answer. And the last point I want to make is you bring this up, the guns on social media. We talk about consequences. Look, in our country right now, gun culture is pervasive. It's pervasive. We've got mass shooting after mass shooting, and nobody's doing a damn thing about it. So I get why we're so sensitive to this right now. But there's no consequence for Greg Abbott telling his constituents that they should go buy more guns, and then we have mass shooting after mass shooting in Texas. There's no consequence for an elected Tennessee official to send out a Christmas card holding AR-15s with his young family, and then there's a shooting in his very district. There's no consequences to that. So why are we trying to lay down the hammer on a 23-year-old who didn't break a law? Explain that to me.
Now, part of the conversation is that we having a bunch of mass shootings going on in our country. And Ja Morant is being irresponsible by having this gun. He could have shot himself. He could have shot somebody else. But I'm like, hold up, wait. We not the face of public mass shootings in America? This is the face of public mass shootings in America. This is the face of public mass shootings in America. How do we as Black Americans get cloaked with that sin? That's the issue with me. Ja Morant is not responsible for suburban white kids being fed up with whatever they're fed up with and taking it out on the public. How do Black people become responsible for the sins of white America? Biden said he can't do nothing about gun control law. You just heard him talk about Greg Abbott and all the other governors and all the other politicians that won't do anything about gun control law. But somehow Ja Morant has to bear that burden. Ja Morant has to take responsibility. You know, it's like we are already the most accountable people in America. Black men get policed the most, we get incarcerated the most, and we do the most time for the same crimes that other people commit. And now we got to be responsible for their sins in public. Like, come on, man. Like, none of this stuff is fair. And it's sad that none of his NBA teammates or league members is stepping up and talking about, you know, the fairness in doling out punishment. You know, and that's the problem that I had with all of this. You got Charles Barkley saying that Ja Morant has to understand what he's doing because he's a role model. Wait, ain't you the same person that said, I am not a role model? Ain't you the same person that threw somebody through a plated glass? And then when you retired from the NBA, you couldn't handle your drinking. You was drunk driving so much that they had to put you in jail for about 3 days. And he's still able. I think he just got a CNN show. He's on NBA TV. It's like, man, if these players was playing during the age of social media, they would be in so much trouble. So much trouble. Ja Morant and these players that's in the league now, this is like uncharted territory where, you know, not only is something happening, but somebody can pull out a camera and go live at any time, you know, and they can see like what you doing at any time and put it on TV. This is uncharted territory, and I don't believe any player from the past would have been able to maneuver through the NBA with this type of scrutiny. You know, now the other issue I have is because the NBA controls the image and the likeness of its Black players, what happens when they try to stand up? And I'm not saying this. I'm not making Ja Morant, Colin Kaepernick or Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf or Craig Hodges. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying when you come from an entity that controls you, how will it feel when you try to enlighten yourself? And that's the problem that the NBA is having with Kyrie Irving. And he's pretty much on his last leg because he, just like Ja Morant, I believe, is not beholden to the money. He just want to play basketball and do what he want to do. And I think some of these players thought the money was going to bring them freedom, and the money constrained them more and put them in a segment of society that they don't want to be in. And I think that's some of the issue that's going on with Morant. Morant is doing, you know, and I'll repeat this again, what just about anybody his age is doing right now. The only difference is he got $30 million. And I actually think the money is kind of getting in his way from doing what he want to do. It's too much. Right, too much money comes with too much oversight. Now you got the oversight of the NBA. You got all these fans. You got, you know, like you can't do anything. You you can't go anywhere without a whole bunch of people coming up to you, and that's hard because the history of America is that they build you up and then they break you down, and this was problematic to me when I seen Malika Andrews interviewing Adam Silver about the Ja Morant incident. And I'll say this because Malika Andrews is famous for going after black men, particularly. And this is the same woman who exonerated a woman who committed adultery and wanted to protect and hide her name and image, but went over Emi Udoka. And it's like, hold up, Emi Udoka is getting in trouble for sleeping around? Like, is that, I understand they was both part of the organization, but they both worked in the front office. And like, so we pick and choose which violations we gonna punish now in the NBA. And that's the whole thing. So she's interviewing Adam. Let me see if I got this video with him and Adam Silver. I think it's this one, maybe. No, there's one. I probably didn't put it up there. But she's interviewing Adam Silver, and Adam Silver. The issue I have with him is just that he's not specific about anything. He's saying, yeah, we still got to investigate it, but I thought this man had matured and came a long way, and blah blah blah. And I'm like, come on, Adam, you on some BS, man. Every time it comes to Adam Silver, he's basically a politician. He's a smooth attorney. He never answered. Here it is. Let me download this video real quick. He never answers any of the questions directly. Everything is indirect, and when he gets all the information and blah blah blah, it's always bureaucratic. Always bureaucratic. And that's a problem they should have, because there, like JJ Redick said, there's no actual set principle for how you deal with what's going on in the NBA right now. Not with Ja Morant. Not somebody that's being investigated and then everything was dropped and he hasn't committed a crime. And right now he haven't even violated any NBA rules. But this was an interview between Malika Andrews and NBA Commissioner Adam Silver.
Because this is the second time in about 2 months that Ja Morant, the star of the Memphis Grizzlies, has been seen on social media brandishing a firearm. And before he was reinstated after his suspension last time, he flew to New York. He sat down. He met with you. What did you say to him about how much more severe it would be if he did this again?
Well, we talked directly about the consequences first before we got to a subsequent potential to have done something wrong. We were very focused on the misconduct that was in front of us at the time. And frankly, most of our conversation was about how incredibly serious the first incident was of waving, a firearm on social media. And again, and the consequences there, an 8-game suspension was pretty serious and something that he, at least to me, seemed to take incredibly seriously in that time. And we spoke for a long time about not just the consequences that could have on his career, but the safety issues around it. Could have injured, maimed, killed himself, someone else with an act like that. And also the acknowledgement that, as you said, he's a star. I mean, he has an incredibly huge following. Yeah. And that my concern, and I thought he shared with me, that millions, if not tens of millions of kids globally would see him as having done something that was celebrating in a way. That act of using a firearm in that fashion. And so I at least was left with the sense that he was taking this incredibly seriously. So honestly, I was shocked when I saw this weekend that video. Now, we're in the process of investigating it. And we'll figure out exactly what happened to the best we can then. The video's a bit grainy and all that, but I'm assuming the worst, but we'll figure.
Like, that to me is straight hypocrisy. It's not what he's did. It's not what he did, but it's how people perceived him. And that's what I said. It's not even how people perceive him. It's how the white audience perceived him. And the NBA reacts to white fragility. When whites are offended, the NBA, the NFL are the leagues that move quickly. Those are the two leagues dominated by black men, and those are the two leagues that coincidentally have the most oversight. So it's not that he did anything illegal. It's not that he broke any rules or anything. It's just the fact that white people perceived him a certain way. And now Adam Silver got to step in to kind of like get everything straight. And he needs to discipline Ja Morant. And Ja Morant didn't. We thought we had him straight the first time, but now we got to get him straight because he's irresponsible. It's like, is a black man with a gun what's the difference between a person with a gun, whether they black or white, right? Was Draymond Green irresponsible when he had the gun with LeBron James, or was they responsible because they was being supervised by whites? Was Chris Kamaan irresponsible, or are white men with guns more responsible than black men with guns? And how was he gonna like maim or harm somebody when he just pulls out a gun and puts it right back? This whole idea that you get to treat these grown men like kids because they signed up to the league is just crazy. And what they really don't want in the NBA, is another person like this.
Champion. Ezra Charles was champion. Rocky Marciano was champion. They were only sports images. And when the sport leave, they die. I haven't been in boxing for 3 years. And I'm in news more. I'm in colleges more. TV series is like this from all over the world are coming to talk to me. See, naturally a few dollars is gone. As they say, the price of freedom comes high. I have paid, but I am free. I leave town when I want. I have no cigar-smoking white boss to say, where are you at today? Where are you going? When they get as famous as me, my friend, they're not too free to go where they want to go, mainly with their own people. I have paid a great price. I'm leaving town tomorrow at 5 in the morning. I'm stopping in Atlanta to open up a few more, buy some land for some more restaurants. And then I'm going out to California. I go when I want. I leave when I want. I say what I want on your TV show. I say it all over the world. It costs me. I can't go back to my job now because boss don't want me on the job now, but I'm free. You understand?
You are happy to have thrown away perhaps the greatest sports career since the war.
I haven't thrown it away. I haven't lost it. I would say I turned it down. I'm not, see, the greatest sports title mean nothing, mister, if you cannot be free.
That's what these major sport institutions don't want again. That's why they vet. See, part of the farming system is not only being able to develop a player, because we've seen players make the NBA, especially recently, that wasn't even good. They just had a big following. Part of the vetting system is that they not only get to condition your game and your body and how you play, but the most important part is that they get to condition your mind, right? In basketball, it's what's called being coachable. Being coachable is somebody that understands how to submit to white authority. That's the whole thing right there. And when Ja Morant goes to New York and has that meeting with Adam Silver, and then they saying a few months later, you doing what you agree. I don't even know what their conversation was about. If he agreed not to get into any more incidents, or he just agreed not to have any guns, I don't understand. But he does have a Second Amendment right, even though he plays in the NBA, and the NBA doesn't take that away from you. I don't know what the agreement was, but he broke the social contract, and the social contract is that you will always submit to white authority, and that's the biggest issue here. The issue isn't that Ja Morant had a gun. The issue is how whites perceive blacks with guns when they're not under the supervision of other whites, and how Ja Morant didn't capitulate to whatever Adam Silver wanted him to do. And it makes the NBA look bad because you have these black men who are running wild with all this money from these white benefactors, but they not listening. That's why a lot of people is calling for Ja Morant to, he should get a 40-game suspension. He should be suspended for the whole year. We really got to do something to this man to let him understand. And I was just thinking about something. I know a lot of NBA players went broke from bad spending habits or getting incarcerated or things of those natures, but I can't think of any professional athlete that went broke just because they had bad character or they just had a bunch of off-the-court problems. Dennis Rodman still got money. I know Antonio Brown played in the NFL, but he got money. Like, the people that went broke was the people that just didn't have their finances in order. It wasn't so much that they didn't have their off-the-court behavior in order. They still got paid. Gilbert Arenas still got paid his contract term out. If they was to kick Ja Morant out the NBA right now, he can go overseas somewhere and make a boatload of money. It's not going to stop his money. Now, I'm sure he would rather play in the NBA in America than be somewhere else away from the community that he grew up in. But I don't think it's going to stop his money. But I think the real important part here is how white institutions get to control the black image and the black voice. And you got to think about this as we try to fight against white supremacy and fight for reparations. I mean, Ja Morant is Ja Morant, and I'm not advocating for him. Whatever they do with him, Ja Morant is going to be all right. He doesn't advocate for the black community, so it's not our job to defend him. But I think this issue is good to look at in the microcosm because, you know, when you think about when it comes to national politics in America, if you're going to be advocating for issues of black people, then you have to be free. That's one thing about it. You can't be controlled by the opposition and think you're going to get a win. And then was just some of my issues that I had with this whole thing. It's not so much about Ja Morant. It's about how these white institutions control us. And the problem with all this, and I'll just end on this note, is that there's no retirement plan for these players when the NBA can't use them anymore. If you don't save your money, then it's all on you. And a lot of these players, you know, after the NBA gets done with them, end up like this. There's no NBA outreach to make sure Delonte West got good insurance so he can get housing and the help he needs to deal with his unstable mental health condition. There's nothing for players like this. You just get kicked out of the league. You just get kicked out of the league onto the side. There's so many players now that played in the NBA that's just broke and discarded after making these teams hundreds of millions of dollars. So when you think about, hey, you gotta, you know, don't bite the hand that feeds you. You gotta understand, once these people done with you, they done with you. And if you don't have no plan for your retirement, they sure won't. And that's just the truth of the matter. They don't care if you end up like Delonte West. They don't care what happens to you. Once they done with you, they done with you. It's just a business. So all that benevolent talk and goodwill, and the NBA cares when a community gets tackled by a tornado and the NBA shows up and starts building back these white folks' home, that stuff never reaches the ghetto. They don't care about these black men that play for them. That's why they don't get black men from the ghetto anymore. The NBA could easily put that farming system back in the most impoverished communities. Those were the best players come from. But they don't want to deal with the legacy and the burden and the legacy of slavery and everything that was done. They really just want black men who act white. And they would be extremely happy to just deal with black men who assimilated into whiteness and have cut themselves off from their community and only indulge in the dysfunctional behaviors that they deem is appropriate and allowable. And as long as it doesn't go public, the NBA would be just fine. There's never been a time in the NBA where the overwhelmingly majority of the players was extremely dysfunctional. And Ja Morant is no anomaly. And I think it's sad that he gets to be singled out as this person who wants to be a thug when this stuff has been going rampant in the NBA before Ja Morant was even born. And those are just some of my ideas. I'm not advocating for Ja Morant. I'm not advocating for his behavior. I think he does need some maturing to do. But I think we as the black community got to understand this ain't our problem. And if I'm going to defend anybody, it damn sure ain't going to be a racist white institution that breaks black man bodies and doesn't care about them. Let me know what you guys think about this video. Peace. Thanks for watching.